the chamber of the Galactic Council was alive with a tense, almost electric hum, a resonance that only centuries of interstellar bureaucracy could generate. Delegates of dozens of species clustered in semicircular tiers, their forms strange and intimidating, iridescent scales, translucent membranes, segmented limbs, and eyes that reflected thought as if it were light itself. At the center, where human diplomats had been relegated to a single, modest platform, Captain Selene Dray stood upright, her fingers gripping a data pad as though it were a weapon. She slammed it down. Humans are withdrawing from these talks. Effective immediately. The sound reverberated through the chamber like a shockwave. Alien eyes widened, mandibles dropped, and in one elegant motion, Varkelzer rose from his obsidian pedestal, his claws clicking sharply against the floor. His tone carried the weight of authority and thinly veiled fury. "Do you dare defy the Council?" he growled, the vibration of his voice resonating in the chamber's metal frame. Dray did not flinch. "We dare," she said calmly, her voice carrying across species barriers. "And you will learn why." A low murmur surged among the delegates. Some whispered in incomprehensible tongues, others made gestures of shock and disbelief. The humans, for the first time in decades, had done something the Council had not anticipated. They had acted with autonomy, not in consultation, not in deference, but in defiance. "You overestimate your own significance, human," Zur snapped, his segmented eyes narrowing. "You are a fledgling species, barely capable of coordinating interstellar trade, and yet you presume to dictate terms?" Dray's gaze remained steady. "Significance is earned, Zur. Not assumed." She turned slightly toward her team, her officers nodding with quiet assurance. "Prepare the Aurora Nexus for immediate departure from the station orbit. No one touches a single human vessel without my express order." One of the Council aides stepped forward, trembling. "Captain Dray, the Council is willing to..." "Willing to what?" Dray interrupted. "To bend us over centuries of negotiation until Earth has nothing left to negotiate with. I've read your proposals. You demand resources that aren't yours to claim, sovereignty that isn't yours to enforce, and military cooperation that violates every treaty of ethics and human law. No. We withdraw. Now." Zur hissed, the sound sharp and aggressive. "Do you comprehend the consequences? Withdrawing from these talks is..." "Exactly what humans do when pushed to the brink," Dray replied. "And unlike you, we calculate the risks before making the move. I suggest you rethink your assumptions." For a moment, the chamber fell into a suffocating silence. Then, as if on cue, other council members began to murmur among themselves. A few species, known for their pragmatism and suspicion of Varkelzer's aggressive methods, exchanged glances. Even some of Zur's staunch supporters seemed uneasy. Dray allowed herself a faint smile. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to signal confidence to her team. "Let's move," she said softly, gesturing toward the nearest transport bay. As the humans left the chamber, the Council erupted. Zur's voice thundered across the public audio network. "You cannot leave. You are bound by the Council's charter." Dray's voice carried back over the network, calm, firm. "We are bound only by treaties we have voluntarily signed. Nothing beyond that. Humanity does not negotiate under duress. We will return only on terms we find acceptable." Her team followed silently, disciplined. Lieutenant Malik, her second in command, whispered, "Do you think they understand what we've just done?" Dray shook her head. "They understand it now. But they won't comprehend it fully until later. And by then, it may be too late for them to stop what's coming." On board the Aurora Nexus, the atmosphere shifted. Engineers and crew moved with quiet efficiency, running diagnostics, securing critical systems, and readying the ship for immediate departure. Every human aboard knew the stakes. Their actions had ignited a political firestorm that could easily become an interstellar war. Yet their resolve did not waver. Dray accessed the Council's latest proposals. Each page was a calculated attempt to diminish humanity's autonomy, veiled with language of diplomacy. She scrolled through the demands, resource quotas that would cripple Earth's ecosystems, obligations to military operations that could drag humans into conflicts with no moral justification, and oversight mandates that treated humans as children, incapable of decision-making. She tapped a button. Encrypt these documents and send them to our allies in the neutral factions. Let them know exactly what's happening. Transparency is our ally. Malik raised an eyebrow. Won't that provoke them further? Dray considered for a second, then nodded. Perhaps. But hiding it will provoke more. When others see the Council's true intentions, we won't stand alone. And that's when the power balance begins to shift. The communications officer, a young officer named Tessa, chimed in. Captain, the Council's enforcers are deploying scouts. They'll try to intercept us on exit vectors. Let them come, Dray said. We're ready. The first warning signals flickered on the main console. Alien craft, sleek and menacing, adjusted their trajectory toward the Aurora Nexus. The humans braced for a confrontation. Yet, even as tension mounted, there was a sense of exhilaration, a rare clarity in which every crew member knew that they were acting for their species, not as pawns in a centuries-old political game. Zur's voice returned over the comms, cold and precise. You cannot escape, humans. Compliance is mandatory. Dray leaned forward, her expression unyielding. Compliance is your choice. Obedience is ours alone. Initiate jump sequence. The ship hummed as its engines powered up, energy thrumming through every fiber of the vessel. Lights in the chamber of the Council flickered as if reacting to the humans' audacity. Then, in a sudden flare of controlled power, the Aurora Nexus vanished from orbit, leaving Zur and the Council staring at empty space. A tense silence followed. Then, from the shadows of the chamber, a member of a neutral species, a serpentine diplomat named Hyrule, spoke softly, almost reverently. They are different. They act with purpose, not fear. Zur's segmented eyes glinted. Different, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. This is only the beginning. And for the first time, the Council realized that humans could not be underestimated, not by technology, by numbers, or by tradition. They had acted boldly, decisively, and without hesitation. Humanity had withdrawn, but in doing so, they had claimed the first true victory of the new interstellar era, recognition of their agency. Above the Elysium 7 system, the Aurora Nexus surged into faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity's defiance into the void, and carrying a message that would echo across the stars: underestimate humans at your peril. The Aurora Nexus sailed through the velvet void of space, engines thrumming with disciplined power. Outside the viewport, distant stars streamed past, a cosmic river unbound by politics or fear. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but purposeful, humans at work, every movement precise, every glance calculated. Captain Selene Dray leaned over the command console, her eyes scanning the encrypted communications flowing in from allied factions across the sector. We have confirmation, Lieutenant Malik reported, voice low but urgent. Several Council factions are questioning Zur's authority. Some suggest sanctions, but others, he paused, glancing at the captain. Others are hesitant. They're unsettled by how we withdrew. Dray nodded. Good. Unease is leverage. But we cannot rely on it alone. We need actionable advantage. Tessa, status on Council intelligence? Tessa's fingers danced across the hollow keyboard. Encrypted channels intercepted, Captain. They're discussing covert operations, attempts to sabotage our communications, plant false intelligence to destabilize the crew's confidence. Dray's jaw tightened. Then we anticipate every move before they make it. Prepare a counterintelligence matrix. Every sensor, every comm channel, every operative aboard this ship will be monitored for anomalies. No surprises. Malik raised an eyebrow. Predictable Zur behavior, he underestimates humans. Classic mistake. But he's bold. He won't wait for subtlety. Dray smiled faintly. That's the point. Boldness is predictable. Calculated unpredictability is ours. the first test came sooner than expected. Alarms blared, red lights flashing as the ship registered unauthorized attempts to breach internal systems. Tessa's hands flew over the console, isolating the intrusion. Someone's trying to override navigation controls, remote hacking from Council craft. They've masked the signal to appear internal. Contain it, Dray ordered. Trace the source and feed them a phantom network. Let them believe they're inside the system while we prepare a countermeasure. Across the bridge, the crew moved with synchronized urgency. Humans were not the most technologically advanced species in the sector, but they had something far more dangerous: ingenuity under pressure. Within minutes, the Aurora Nexus was feeding false coordinates to the intruders, drawing the Council's fleet into a trap that would waste their energy and reveal their tactics. Good, Malik muttered, eyes glinting with admiration. Nothing quite like watching humans fight with brains instead of brute force. Dray didn't respond immediately. Her mind was already moving ahead, anticipating the Council's next step. Prepare to broadcast intercepted communications to neutral factions. They must see Xur's tactics in plain view. Transparency protects us more than any shield. Meanwhile, across the system, in the Council chamber on Elysium 7, Varkal Xur seethed. He pounded his claws against the obsidian dais, sending reverberations that echoed through the ornate hall. They are defying me at every level. Every maneuver we deploy is anticipated, every stratagem countered. A fellow counselor, a crystalline entity named Leora, tilted slightly, her facets catching the light. Perhaps, Varkal, you underestimated their understanding. Humans are simple by your standards, yes, but they adapt, and they think in ways you cannot predict. Xur hissed, the sound sharp and dangerous. Adaptation is one thing. Influence is another. They cannot survive without the Council's order. Yet his words rang hollow. Across multiple communications feeds, messages leaked, proof of coercive intent, of exploitative treaties, and of secret surveillance attempts. Neutral factions reacted immediately, issuing statements of concern. Some moved to protect human interests, citing ethical violations and violations of protocol. Xur's maneuvering, meant to isolate humans, was backfiring spectacularly. Back on the Aurora Nexus, Dray convened her team in the strategy room. Holographic displays of Council activity hovered above the table. Lines of information crisscrossed like spiderwebs. They're desperate, she said. And desperate opponents make mistakes. Malik leaned forward, pointing at a cluster of intercepted data. This is their next target, sabotage at the orbital relay stations. If they succeed, Earth's communications with the colonies are cut. Panic will follow. Dray's eyes narrowed. Then we stop it before it starts. I want a skeleton team aboard the relay satellites, disguised as maintenance drones. Minimal exposure, maximum efficiency. Timing will be critical. Tessa tapped the console. I can create adaptive cloaking sequences. They'll see ghosts instead of real humans. Dray allowed a brief, satisfied smile. Exactly. Let's remind the Council what humans do when cornered. Execution was precise. Small teams infiltrated the relay stations using compact craft, undetectable to standard Council scanners. Systems were patched, surveillance rerouted, and traps were laid for any interlopers. The human solution was elegant. The Council's own probes were fed false data while the real stations remained fully operational. Meanwhile, back on the Aurora Nexus, Dray monitored the unfolding events. Notice anything? She asked. Malik raised an eyebrow. The Council's enforcers are beginning to question their own orders. Internal dissent is growing. Humans are becoming respected. Not yet respected, Dray corrected, voice firm. Feared, maybe. But respect comes after consistency. Our next moves must be flawless. Tessa's console pinged. Incoming message from a neutral faction. They've reviewed our data and propose an alliance. They're willing to pressure the Council for transparency in exchange for access to some of our research. Dray considered for a moment. Except cautiously. Information is power, but trust is earned. We give them enough to strengthen our position, not enough to compromise Earth. Hours passed, and the Council's desperation grew. Attempts at covert sabotage failed repeatedly. Attempts at diplomatic pressure were met with unflinching human resolve. Xur found himself trapped between his arrogance and the unforeseen cleverness of a species he had dismissed as primitive. He summoned his senior advisors. "We cannot allow them to dictate terms," he growled. "Every move they make undermines the Council's authority." A crystalline advisor spoke carefully, voice like refracted light. "Perhaps authority is not absolute. Humans operate differently. Their strength lies not in conformity, but in creativity and audacity." Xur's segmented eyes narrowed, but deep within, a grudging acknowledgement flickered. Humans were not what he had expected. They were far more dangerous than brute force could predict. Back on the Aurora Nexus, Dray addressed her crew in the command room. "We've seen the Council's reaction. It's predictable, and yet flawed. They underestimate humans. They assume fear will dictate our decisions. But we've proven, repeatedly, that ingenuity, discipline, and moral clarity win where intimidation fails." Malik leaned back in his chair. "Do you think they'll ever truly understand us?" Dray shook her head. "No. But they will respect us. And respect, even grudging, is the foundation for every future negotiation." The Aurora Nexus sailed on, silent and resolute, its crew acutely aware that they were no longer just representatives of Earth, they were exemplars of human capability, ingenuity, and courage. Each action, each maneuver, each countermeasure was a testament to a species that refused to be underestimated. Above Elysium 7, the Council convened once more. Internal disputes had erupted, alliances had shifted, and Xur found himself isolated, forced to recognize an uncomfortable truth: the humans were not pawns. They were actors. They were innovators. And they were in control of the next stage of the unfolding galactic drama. The first chapter of human strategy had been completed with precision and audacity. Now the next phase loomed, turning awareness into tangible power, leveraging the Council's hesitation, and ensuring that no faction could manipulate or diminish humanity again. Captain Selene Dray gazed at the endless stars ahead. A smile tugged at the corner of her lips. The Council had underestimated them. Humanity's era in interstellar politics had only just begun. The Aurora Nexus drifted through the void, its hull gleaming faintly under the light of distant stars. Captain Selene Dray stood at the observation deck, hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the swirling nebula ahead. Every move of the Galactic Council had been anticipated, countered, and broadcast with precision. Now, it was time to press their advantage. "Tessa, status on allied factions?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding. "All factions that pledged tentative support have confirmed. They've issued formal requests for transparency and oversight of Council operations," Tessa replied, fingers flying over her console. "Several have also offered resources to assist in defensive measures if the Council escalates." Dray nodded. "Excellent. Malik, prep the communications package. Every intercepted order, every attempt at coercion, every plot they've hatched against us, it all goes live. Public, verifiable, undeniable." Malik raised an eyebrow. "Going all in, Captain?" Dray's gaze was steady. "Going all in ensures the next move is ours. The Council underestimates humans, and we intend to make them pay for that miscalculation." The first tremors of the Council's panic reached them even before the transmissions were fully processed. Varkal Xur convened an emergency session in the chamber, his claws drumming on the obsidian dais. "They have spread false data," he roared. "This cannot stand. Send enforcement teams. Retrieve them immediately." Leora, the crystalline advisor, tilted slightly, facets refracting light like fractured truth. "Captain Dray's transmissions are accurate. All evidence is verifiable. Even the most loyal of Council factions are questioning your orders." Xur's segmented eyes flickered with irritation. "Then question all you want. Humans will comply regardless. They are bound by the Charter." But the charter was a human argument now, weaponized against him. Council enforcers attempting to intercept the Aurora Nexus found themselves misdirected, caught in sophisticated decoys and false signals. Human ingenuity had turned every attempted suppression into a failure. Dray leaned over her console, studying the holographic feeds. Notice anything? Malik squinted. Xur's forces are faltering. They've stopped coordinated attacks and are beginning to argue among themselves. Even his advisors are whispering dissent. Exactly, Dray said. Divide and uncertainty, tools humans have used for centuries. It works in politics as effectively as it does in warfare. The communications package was released. Hollow projections of council orders, intercepted plans, and evidence of coercive intent streamed across neutral factions. The reaction was immediate. Ships and stations across the sector shifted allegiance, formal statements condemned the Council's conduct, and support for humanity solidified. Back on Elysium 7, Xur's voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and urgent. Cease your interference. Compliance is mandatory. A ripple of dissent caught through the assembly. A delegation from the Lume species stood, their elongated forms leaning forward. Mandatory compliance is meaningless if it contradicts ethics and interstellar law, their lead diplomat stated, voice steady. The humans have acted within their rights and with clarity. Your enforcement is illegal and counterproductive. Xur hissed, frustrated beyond measure. He had expected fear and hesitation, not transparency and resolve. They are only lucky, he spat. Dray, watching the Council's broadcasts in real time, smiled faintly. Luck has nothing to do with it. Strategy, observation, and decisiveness, that's what humans bring. Malik leaned closer. Do you think they'll finally concede? Not concede, Dray corrected. Recognize. There's a difference. The final confrontation came as Xur attempted a last-minute coup within the Council. Using loyal enforcers, he aimed to corner humanity by forcing a show of force against allied neutral factions. But every move had been anticipated. The Aurora Nexus initiated cloaking sequences, repositioning without detection, while human allies across the sector coordinated a blockade of Xur's fleet movements. Tessa, deploy countermeasures, Dray ordered. Everything they send will be neutralized or rerouted. No collateral damage, no excuses. Her crew executed flawlessly. Ships attempting to breach human space were met with strategic interference, communications jammed, navigation misdirected, engines overridden, not destroyed, but contained. Xur's plan unraveled in real time. In the Council chamber, Xur's fury was palpable. He turned to his advisors, claws slamming the floor. Stop them! Every attempt to neutralize humans must succeed. Leora's voice cut through his rage, calm and crystalline. Captain Dray has anticipated every move, Varkle. Even your enforcement cannot succeed against a species that acts decisively and morally. You have underestimated them. Entirely. Xur recoiled slightly, a flicker of doubt crossing his eyes. For the first time, he realized humans were not just unpredictable, they were exceptionally capable, ethically uncompromising, and unafraid. Dray's voice came over the communications channel, clear and unwavering. Xur, the Council cannot dictate human action through coercion. You may attempt to intimidate, but our response will always be proportionate and principled. Negotiation proceeds only under conditions that respect sovereignty and mutual respect. Any other course is null and void. A murmur spread across the chamber. Even those loyal to Xur could not deny the logic, the integrity, and the authority behind her words. Humanity had turned moral clarity into tactical advantage. Xur's segmented eyes narrowed. This is temporary. You have not defeated the Council. Dray's expression remained calm. Defeat is not our goal. Recognition is. And recognition has already been achieved. The Council, fractured and pressured by neutral allies, convened under emergency protocols. Concessions were reluctantly made, all coercive mandates withdrawn, treaties revised to respect human autonomy, and oversight committees restructured to include human representatives. Xur's authority, once absolute, was diminished, his failure undeniable. Malik exhaled, leaning back. That was intense. Do you think they'll actually respect us now? Dray's gaze remained fixed on the stars ahead. Respect is earned, Malik. But now, at least, they understand. Underestimation is gone. That is victory enough. Tessa tapped her console. Incoming response from the neutral factions. They've requested a formal delegation to establish trade and research protocols. They want humans leading the negotiations. Dray allowed herself a brief smile. Leadership through competence, not coercion. That is how humans will operate in the galaxy. The Aurora Nexus set course for the first human-led negotiations, its crew aware that they had just altered the balance of power. The Council, once confident in their control, was forced to acknowledge an inconvenient truth: humans were not pawns. They were actors, innovators, and guardians of their own destiny. Above Elysium 7, Xur stared at the void where the Aurora Nexus had been moments before, a cold realization settling in. Humans could not be intimidated. Could not be controlled. Could not be ignored. Dray stood on the deck, watching stars streak past faster than light could reach them. Humanity, she murmured, does not ask permission. It creates its own path. And in that moment, across the galaxy, every species that had witnessed the unfolding events understood the same truth: to underestimate humans was to court failure. A new era of human influence had begun, built on audacity, strategy, and the unshakable certainty that they would stand for themselves, no matter the cost. The Council had learned its lesson. Humanity had made its mark. And the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter in acknowledgement. The Aurora Nexus hovered in orbit above Elysium 7, a silent sentinel against the swirling storms of political chaos below. Captain Selene Dray studied the holographic displays, each one showing the latest communications between neutral factions, Council advisors, and human allies across the sector. The galaxy had taken notice. Humans were no longer unpredictable outsiders, they were a force to be reckoned with. Lieutenant Malik stepped forward, voice steady but tinged with awe. Captain, the Council has requested an audience. Not a negotiation, a formal acknowledgement of what they call our competence. Dray's eyes narrowed slightly, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Acknowledgement, yes. Respect, not yet. But it's the start. She tapped the console. Prepare the formal delegation. This is not a surrender. It's a statement: humanity will engage on its terms, not as subjects, but as equals. The Council chamber was subdued when the human delegation arrived. The usual hustle of debate and argument had been replaced by measured anticipation. Varkal Xur waited, claws resting on the obsidian dais, his segmented eyes betraying a flicker of unease. Dray stepped forward, her posture impeccable, voice clear and authoritative. The Aurora Nexus comes not to negotiate under coercion, but to establish partnerships founded on respect and mutual benefit. A ripple ran through the chamber. Even Xur's closest advisors were silent. You have disrupted centuries of protocol, Xur said, voice low but edged with restraint. You acted boldly, perhaps recklessly. Dray met his gaze evenly. Boldness is often mistaken for recklessness. Humans act decisively because we consider the consequences. And we do not compromise our principles for temporary advantage. A crystalline delegate, Leora, spoke next, her facets shimmering like liquid light. Your actions have revealed flaws in the Council's processes, Captain Dray. Transparency, accountability, and ethical oversight must now be restructured. Humans have forced clarity upon us. Malik whispered beside Dray, they're trying to soften Xur's response, make this palatable. Dray nodded subtly. Let them. Our aim is clarity, not chaos. Council records were projected in the chamber. Every coercive mandate, every hidden agenda, every covert plot was laid bare. Neutral factions nodded in agreement, some even applauding, their forms rippling with approval. The Council's authority had been shaken, not broken, but it could no longer be taken for granted. Xur's claws clenched. You have forced the Council into a corner. But do not presume this guarantees you influence. Dray's smile was faint, controlled. Influence is earned through competence and integrity, not fear or intimidation. And we have both. The formal acknowledgement of human autonomy was swift. Treaties that once imposed disproportionate obligations on Earth were suspended and renegotiated. Human representatives were granted authority equal to any council delegate, with veto power on matters affecting human systems. Allies from neutral factions had a voice in every discussion, ensuring balance and fairness. Malik leaned closer, whispering, "They're actually giving us leverage." Dray's eyes scanned the chamber. Leverage is meaningless without responsibility. We will lead by example, not by force. Outside the chamber, human engineers and diplomats coordinated with neutral factions to establish joint oversight committees. Every action was deliberate, precise, and transparent. Humans demonstrated that leadership was not dominance, but accountability combined with foresight. Hours later, Dray convened her team aboard the Aurora Nexus. "Today is not the end," she said, voice firm. "It's a new beginning. The Council has recognized us, but that recognition is fragile. We must demonstrate consistently that humanity's approach, ethical, intelligent, decisive, is a stabilizing force in the galaxy, not a threat." Tessa tapped her console. The Allied factions are preparing for the first human-led Council session. Protocols, resources, security, everything is being aligned with our directives. Dray's gaze hardened. Then ensure it's flawless. Every communication, every logistical detail, every security measure, executed without error. Mistakes now could undo all we've achieved. Malik allowed a rare smile. "I never thought we'd see the Council bend before human ingenuity." Dray glanced at him, her expression unchanging but eyes sharp. "Not bend. Recognize. There is a difference. We do not force respect, we command it by proving ourselves worthy." The first human-led session was broadcast across multiple sectors. Captain Dray opened with a concise statement: "Humans act with intention, responsibility, and transparency. Our actions are guided by principles, not coercion. We invite collaboration, not submission. We expect clarity, not manipulation. This is how humanity will engage with the galaxy, decisively, fairly, and without compromise." Delegates listened. Some were skeptical, others cautiously supportive. But every listener understood the message: humans were now a decisive actor in interstellar diplomacy. Varkal Zur watched from the sidelines, his segmented eyes cold but thoughtful. For the first time, he acknowledged what he had long refused to see. Humans were not impulsive brutes. They were a species capable of strategy, ingenuity, and moral clarity, qualities the Council could not control, manipulate, or dismiss. Dray concluded the session with a final statement. "We do not seek domination. We seek partnership built on respect and accountability. Any attempt to undermine this will be met with resolute defense and transparency. Humanity's era in the galaxy begins not with force, but with principle." A murmur of acknowledgement swept through the chamber. Even Zur's voice was subdued. "The humans are formidable." Outside the chamber, Malik exhaled, leaning against the console. "Formidable doesn't even begin to cover it." Dray studied the galaxy through the viewport. Stars streaked past in the silent ballet of light and time. "Formidable is only the beginning," she said softly. "We act now not for power, but for enduring influence, shaped by competence, ethics, and the willingness to stand for what is right." The Aurora Nexus set course for Earth, its mission accomplished but far from over. Humanity had proven itself to the galaxy, not through sheer might, but through calculated action, ethical clarity, and unyielding determination. Every star they passed reminded them that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges. And humanity would meet each one on its terms. Zur watched the human fleet disappear into the stars, a grudging acknowledgement in his gaze. "They are not to be underestimated," he muttered. Dray's final message to the Council echoed across sectors: "Underestimation is a mistake the galaxy cannot afford to repeat." humanity will act, humanity will endure, and humanity will lead when the time is right. And in that moment, the galaxy understood a fundamental truth: humans were not merely participants, they were architects of their destiny. Their ingenuity, ethics, and audacity had reshaped the balance of power, and the era of human influence had begun. Above Elysium 7, stars gleamed with quiet brilliance, reflecting the certainty that humans had carved a path among them. Not through fear, not through domination, but through unshakable resolve. Humanity had emerged, not as the Council expected, but as a force the galaxy could neither ignore nor underestimate.